Today class, we're going to start using our Linux box. So last video we've set up and we've had Linux installed. Now we're going to actually run it and use it. Before we start our machine though, we want to create a shared folder between the VirtualBox and the host machine. This will allow you to get files off the machine and submit it for, say, homework. So while the machine's off, click on it, click on Settings, and under the Settings tab, look for the shared folders. Here, we're going to add a folder. So I've already added mine, but here we're going to add a folder by clicking on the folder with the plus mark. And you can simply just use the drop down and select Other. To bring up a Windows dialog, and you can select wherever you want on your computer to act, whatever folder on your computer to act as a shared drive or shared mount point. We'll talk more about that when we get to the file system with Linux. Mine I've kept under the same folder with all my virtual boxes. I've just made a folder called Linux Shared Folder. You basically right-click, New Folder, and give it whatever name you want, and then select that folder and hit OK. Also, we want to do auto mount, so we want to make sure you've selected auto mount. I'll explain what's going to happen here a little bit later. Don't worry about selecting read only because we want to be able to write and read from this folder. You're going to click OK. I'm not, because I've already created it. Once we have that set up, we can go ahead and start our virtual machine. So in login, I mentioned this earlier, or last time we got to this point, but the login is be very careful you do not forget your password. On a standard Unix or Linux system, you'll have a root user which can reset your password. However, in Ubuntu, you do not get a root server, at least by default. Therefore, if you forget your password, you're in trouble. It's very difficult, especially since you're the administrator of your server. It's very difficult to recover a password. So make sure you do not forget your password. Just type it, you'll see that I will not be able to log in, and there's really no recovery option. So, and also notice that if you have the right password, it's much quicker for logging in. So since we're here, we will start in what is called the home folder. There was a couple things we're going to do before we start playing too much with the server. We're going to install some programs using apt-get. This is a built-in program for Ubuntu. Not all Linux distributions have this, but most have some sort of similar program you can use. And this makes installing programs much easier than trying to, say, compile them from scratch with source code. So first thing we're going to do is sudo apt-get update. Anytime I am using a system or I'm affecting the system outside of my home directory, I'm pretty much going to have to use the word sudo. This is giving me elevated privileges. This is telling the computer that I want to do this, and I am instructing it to run in a heightened permission mode. You have to type your password, and then you'll see it'll run sudo apt-get update. You will need a network connection for this as well. The next one you might want to run, I don't think you have to do this for a server, but you may want to just double check. Sudo apt-get install. This is saying I want to install some software, and we're going to install Vim. I believe this should already be installed, but you may as well double check. Another one you're going to want to install is sudo apt-get install build essentials. One quick comment here, if you forget exactly what the name is, but you know like the first part, so I know it's build dash, I can use tab, press the tab button, and it'll fill in what the other options are. So in this case, it's build essential. This will be useful for things for C++ that were in makefiles, which we're going to use later. Finally, one thing you should install is the VirtualBox guest toolkit. Not all of this functionality will be available to you, being we're using a command line only environment, but it will allow you to do some certain things. So apt-get install virtual, and again, you can use a tab. You can see all the different the different options. So we know it's VirtualBox dash, and then we see a more restricted or more condensed view of options, and we'll say guest dash DKMS. And I've already have it installed. This one can take a couple minutes. Remember, if I'm going too fast, please pause the video or go back if I skip over something you miss. And please try to take notes on this. And most of these commands I'm going to talk about today are you're going to need to memorize. Later on, we get to some more advanced stuff. You may not have to put it all to rote memory, but these are the very basic commands of Linux, and you'll need to have them memorized. So the first thing I want to talk about is processes. If I use the command ps, that's basically list all the processes currently running. And you'll see here that I have bash and I have a command called ps. These are the two processes running. These are actually I'm only seeing the processes running under my username. If I do ps-a, I will see all the processes running, which include the system processes. We're not too worried about that right now. Notice that I'm also seeing a second process, which is the command I just typed, ps. However, that ends right after this listing happens. Therefore, this process is no longer running. So currently, all I'm running is bash. We probably are not going to have this problem immediately, but should you ever have an out-of-control program, you can kill or stop the program. So I've made a little quick C++ file here, which you don't need to worry about how I did it at the moment. We'll talk about that later in the semester. I'm going to run my program, and what happens here is I've simulated having an accident in my code where I have an infinite loop. So the program simply does not end. If I press Control Z, I will stop the program but not kill it. So it says stopped. If I type ps, you'll see that I see my a.out is still there. If I want to kill that, I can use a command called kill, and then I can send various signals here. However, the one that you probably want to send is -kill. That means immediately terminate it. And then I want to provide the program identifier, which is the PID number in the list to the left column, and which is 1632. And now that says that process has been killed. If I look for my processes, you'll see that it's no longer there. Another way to do it, if I'm running my out-of-control program again, is I can press Control C, and this will actually kill the program completely. This does not always work. In this case, it will. Some circumstances will not. This will not work. So you have to be a little bit careful. So Control C will stop it. Kill it. Control Z will stop it. Also, if you want to type or rerun a command you've recently run, you can simply hit the up arrow, and it will bring up the history, or you'll walk up the history of the commands you've run, and so you can just find the command you want to run and hit enter again. This is very useful when you have very complex and long commands. Should you ever have a problem with a different command or program in Linux, you can use what's called the man page or the help tag. So for example, if I've just forgotten what ps does, I can do man for manual, and in the command name ps, and then it will give me a somewhat cryptic but complete description of the command and different flags. I will not lie, it's a little bit of a practice to read these and to understand these fully, but once you've had some time and experience reading these and going through it, you will understand what they're talking about. So this is the easiest way to see how to use a command in Linux. If you forget, if that seems too difficult to remember, I can also do the command, say ps, and then --help. Okay, another thing I can use to get help on a command, however this one does not work on all the commands, is the --help flag. So for example, mkdir, which is stands for make directory. If I forget how to do this, I can also use a flag called -- and type the word help, and it will bring up a description of the command I'm trying to understand. Usually it will be very similar to the man page itself. Again, sudo, the word sudo is going to have to be used if I'm trying to edit anything outside of the current folder I'm in. The current folder can be found by using a command called pwd, which stands for present working directory. Here you'll see your slash, which is the root. The / represents root, home, and then your username. If you're inside that folder, you can pretty much do whatever you want. If you're outside that folder, you will have to use the word sudo. Now, sudo gives you basically what's called root access to the machine, which means you can do whatever you want. This can be very, very dangerous. The classic one, the command to never run, is this command, because that will wipe out your hard drive. So be very, very careful with what you run under sudo. Also, if you need to use a sudo terminal, you can use sudo bash, and this will open up it'll look very similar to your terminal, except it'll have a £, and here you will be doing everything with elevated privileges or root privileges. To get out of sudo bash, just simply type exit, and you will return to your console. The reason you do not want to stay in sudo bash is, again, to protect your system. For our case, it probably won't be too big of an issue. However, if you were using a desktop Linux and you ran, say, a web browser in sudo bash, then the web browser would have root access or elevated access to your machine, and any script that tried to run could do whatever it wanted to your hard drive. Okay, I'm going to give a very quick introduction to Vim. This one we're going to go into more detail a little bit later in the semester. But Vim is going to be our text editor. There are several other text editors you may use. To start out, if you type ls, by the way, ls is what gives you the listing of your current directory. So these are all the different files I've made for various testing. We can just simply say we want to make a text file. So we'll say vim my text file. Now in Linux, we don't need extensions, so I don't need to say .txt here. It doesn't mean anything to Linux. I can if I want to, or I can just simply not have an extension. However, if this file is going to be used for, say, homework, and it's going to be used on a Windows server or Windows system, it might be a good thing to say .txt, not for the sake of Linux, but for the sake of Windows, so it knows how to open it up. So again, the extension itself is optional, but since this file might end up on a Windows machine, well, we can say .txt. So vim and the file name I want to create, and I'm going to be presented with this screen. Classically, you want to press the I to engage insert mode, and then you can start typing. Once I'm finished with this, I can simply hit escape to bring up the command line, shift, and I want to basically type colon, and I can say quit write, which is QW, or write quit, and this will save my file. Let's say, it'll say things have been written. If I say I want to say ls again to see what files are on my home directory, you'll see we have the myfile.txt or mytextfile.txt, and if I want to view that, I can use the command cat to actually view what's in that file. Be careful with this command because you do not want to run this command on a binary file. So if I ran this on the executable a.out, strange things would start occurring. But since this is a text file, I can say cat and my file name, and then it'll see that I have it'll just echo what's in the file to the screen, which is what we just typed. If for some reason I'm editing a file and I make just a horrible mistake and I want to start over, I can hit escape hit the colon, and then hit Q exclamation mark to state that I want to quit without saving, and nothing will be written to my file. Again, we'll return to Vim later in the semester. If I want to clear my screen, I can use the command clear. This will, get rid of a lot of junk on the screen and take the prompt to the top of the screen. So if I want to view different files in my folder, again, I can use ls to view all the files, and any text file, I can use the command cat to view my text file, which I already demonstrated. This is a different file I made. Now, this becomes a problem though. For example, let's say I had a log file of that program that ran out of control, but the log file is very, very large. Watch what happens if I run it under cat. Essentially, I'm now going to have to sit here for several minutes or kill the process, which I'm going to do, to watch all the content go by the screen. To make this even worse, once it gets to the bottom of the screen, it can't scroll up. So I can't actually view it line by line if I needed to. So cat is not necessarily the best way of going about it. Again, I'm going to kill this with Control C, because I don't want to have to wait. The next thing I can do is I can use a command called more. And it's similar to cat. I'll just give the file I want to view. Again, it needs to be a text file. And this will at least allow me to page down. So here I see the first set of commands. Then if I hit space, I'll see the second page. Space, I'll see the third page, and etc. as I move down. This will at least let me see what's being printed, although I cannot move back up after I've already viewed that current page. To get out, I simply hit Q for quit. So that's another way to view the file. Perhaps the best way to view a large file is the command less.log.txt. And now I can use the arrow keys and move down and up so I can view my log file line by line and go back up should I need to. Again, this is very useful and will most likely be used, will be used very often this semester. Again, once I'm done viewing my file, I can press Q and leave my program. So navigating the file system. We're going to talk about this in more detail, I think next chapter. But like I said, if you type pwd, you'll see what current directory you're in, which is the /home/username. If I want to make a directory, I can use the command mkdir, and I can make a new folder. If I type ls again, you'll see that I see my new folder. If I want to navigate into my new folder, I simply say cd my new folder. Again, I use tab completion there. So once it knew that there were no other folders with those first three letters, it simply went into that folder. If I type ls here, you'll see nothing because the folder is empty. If I want to know where I'm at, again, I can use pwd, and I see that I'm under home, username, and this time my new folder. So I essentially navigated into a folder. If I want to navigate backwards or up, I can cd space ... I can actually navigate above my home directory. So now I'm in the home directory itself, and I can navigate up to root. The / represents root. We'll go into more detail what all these different folders mean. However, remember, this is outside of your user directory. Therefore, you will have to use sudo if you want to really modify or change any of the things up here. For now, we don't have to worry about it, but this is just to show you where you can navigate to. And for the most part, you can navigate anywhere you want. However, you may not be able to change anything, but you can navigate wherever you want and view the different folders and subfolders on your system. Also, as a brief comment, the Unix folder system is not based on drives. In Windows, your drive, such as C or D, will represent a hard disk on your computer, and that will be the highest level you can go in that directory. In Linux, the root is the highest level, but it does not necessarily represent a single drive. I can have multiple drives mounted to different folders underneath this system, and in fact I can have multiple drives mounted across networks under this file system. So do not think of root as your C drive. Also, if I need to get back, so say I get lost, say I'm exploring my system and I somehow end up in this, I end up in some bizarre folder that I don't know how to get back from. And I want to return home, I can simply type cd shift a tilde, which is above the tab key, /. This will take me to the home directory. So that's a good way to get home. All right, now for the assignment, you're going to have to do a couple different things for submitting assignments. One thing I want you guys to do is to use what's called script, so you can log all the commands and outputs of running the different assignments. So I start this by using the command script. And what we'll say is here we have to type whatever file name I want to use. In this case, we will use my homework. One. So it'll say script started, file is my homework 1. Now whatever I will be reflected in this file. So perhaps one of the assignments was to go navigate to the root folder using only cd space ... I would do this. And I could say pwd and show that I am in fact in the root home directory. If I want to navigate back to my home, or navigate back to home, use the tilde /, and now I can show that I'm inside my home folder. This is just a way to show that you've actually done the different commands. When I'm done with script, when I'm done with the assignment, I can say exit, and the homework 1 will be finished and written. So if I cat my homework work 1, you'll see that I have all the texts that I had when I was doing all the commands under script. Now, the next trick is how do I get this off the virtual machine and submit it for an assignment? This is a little bit more tricky. So what we're going to do is we're going to have to use sudo bash for this part. Now again, here I have to be very careful because I'm going to be running root privileges, so I can do a lot of damage right now. The first thing I want to do is I want to find where that shared folder we created earlier before we started the system, what happened to that? That's actually going to be located under a directory called root and then media. And if I do ls here, I'll see I have a folder called sf_Linux shared folder. This is going to be the shared folder to my Windows machine. What I want to do is I want to copy a file into this folder. I want to copy my homework file into this folder. To do that, I'm going to have to use the copy command. So we'll go back to the home directory. Again, unfortunately, this has to be done in bash or in root, so I have to do this with elevated privileges. So the command for copy is very simple. It's cp, then the source file, and then the destination path. If I want to copy a folder, I have to have the -R, capital R, for recursive to copy everything in the directory. Now if I do this, it's not going to work because it doesn't understand a token, but I'm just printing that up there so you can write that down in your notes. So if I'm inside my home directory, or actually I'm currently root, but I'm inside my user's home directory, I have my homework 1, and I want to copy that to that shared folder. I'm going to cp my homework 1, and I'm going to copy it to /media, and then SF. Say I forgot what name that was, I can just hit tab, it'll finish it for me. Then I can actually specify what a new name if I want, but in this case it'll be fine. We'll call it My Homework 1, and I'll just hit enter. Once I've done that, I want to type exit and leave the sudo bash. Now I'm back to my normal permissions, and it's a lot safer for me to use this. And then I can continue on and doing whatever I want. Now, once I have this, if I look in my shared folder on my Windows side, you will see I have My Homework 1. Notice here, I did not put the extension .txt, which is fine for Linux, but Windows does not know how to handle this. So if I double click this file, I will have to specify how I want to open it, and I can say Notepad, and then this is the script that I created inside my Linux VirtualBox. And this is the file I could submit for homework. This is why I say, even though Linux does not require the extensions, it might be useful to have an extension, a window-friendly extension, if you know that file is going to be used on Windows.